Parshas Terumah. Today we're going to talk about the name Terumah, that is the custom to call this week's Parsha, the uniqueness of the name, and how it empowers us in the time of exile. We know that the name of a Parsha is more than just distinguishing it from a previous Parsha or to another Parsha, and it's also more than just taking a word that's relatively close to the beginning of the Parsha and associating that with the rest of the Parsha. It's taught that the name of the Parsha is actually reflective of the theme of the Parsha, and it's conveying that message. So what is it about Parshas Terumah that the custom is to call it Terumah? Seemingly, our sages tell us that there are various types of Terumah, of contributions that the Jewish people can give. There's 10 different ones. So what's unique about our Parsha, where it talks about the contribution that the Jewish people gave towards the Mishkan, that it got the name Terumah. Furthermore, the primary mitzvah that we learn about in this week's Parsha is about making a Mishkan for Hashem, making a holy dwelling place in this world where Hashem's presence is revealed. Seemingly, that should be the primary emphasis that the Parsha should be reflective of through its name. So what is it about Terumah that it gets the name Terumah and not something like Vasili Mikdash or something along those lines of representing Hashem dwelling in this world? Also, contextually, in the Parsha, the Pasuk, which is the primary foundation of everything that the Jewish people were contributing towards, comes after it speaks about the Jewish people contributing. So there's this emphasis on the Jewish people contributing over the foundation and the root of it all, and that is Hashem making a dwelling place for himself in this world. So what is it about it that's unique, that the Torah, that the custom of the Yidden is to call this Parsha Terumah? So we know that by the Mishkan, seemingly it was something that happened in the past. So why does the Torah make a big emphasis on explaining in exhaustive detail every single element or every single material that the Jewish people contributed towards the Mishkan, when seemingly it's something that it happened in the past? So you can say that the idea is that it was a first step, and it was a first step in the process of Hashem dwelling in this world. And we know that when the Jewish people, they study the laws of the Mishkan, it's considered like you're actually building the Beis HaMikdash. But seemingly that wouldn't suffice, because after the Yidden had the Mishkan, they had two other Batei Mikdashim, they had two other temples. So the Mishkan was something that was temporary until there came the eternal Beis HaMikdash, which advanced the level of holiness that the Jewish people experienced, and it became more of a permanent structure. So why are we even focusing on the contributions they gave to the Mishkan? So to understand why the Parsha is called Terumah and the uniqueness that it brings out, we can explain on a deeper level that the Torah calling it Terumah and the focus on the Mishkan is precise and not just a mere outline that the Mishkan had towards the future Beis HaMikdash that was relevant, meaning that it had the same structure in a general way. And what is it precisely about the Mishkan that the Torah is relaying to us, and how does it empower us? So it's explained that the difference between the Mishkan and the revelation that the Yidden had when they were given the Torah is that by the giving of the Torah, it came from above to below. And it was reflective in the world, that the world was negated, the world was silent. It says that there was no birds making any sounds, and the same thing with the animals. There was no echo. Hashem's words permeated everything in the world. The world was completely silent. But what happened after the Torah was given, Har Sinai became mundane. It says after the voices left, the mountain stayed the way it was, and the Yidden continued, and then they had this ability to actually refine the lower realms of the world, bringing all the various materials, the 13 to 15 materials that the Torah describes throughout the Parsha, and that gave them the ability to elevate and refine the world in a process that made the world completely impacted and forever that way, being refined with this level of holiness that's beyond the revelation that they experienced just from above. And therefore, when it comes to Terumah, we find two pirushim, two explanations. One is that it means contributing, setting aside, and the second one is harama, to means to elevate and to lift up. Because when it comes to contributing, the way it works is there's various levels and there's various materials, and each one has its own way of being refined and being elevated. So Terumah represents the Yidden refining the world in a process, step by step, elevating each part according to the way it needs to be elevated. And that's unique about Terumah, and that's unique about the Mishkan that they had in the Midbar, because the Beis HaMikdash was built in Yerushalayim, which Yerushalayim refers to Yira Shalim, which means complete fear of heaven. It was a place that Hashem chose. It's a holy place. And therefore, the effort that was put into it and the divine revelation was already there. And it was not the same as what the Yidden contributed to in the desert when they were building the Mishkan. And therefore, we know that a midbar is referred to as a place that a person does not dwell, Le'yashav Adam Sham. And therefore, the refinement that you cause through your efforts is on a much greater level, because we know that when you refine the darkness, you're able to tap into a much deeper light that you would not have been able to reach absent the darkness that was experienced. So the same thing for the Yidden, them contributing in the desert to the Mishkan gave them this heightened elevation and gave them this ability to bring down the highest of levels, even in a place where a person doesn't reside, which is a midbar. But Chassidus talks about Le'ashav Adam Sham, you reach a place that is even higher than the regular levels of godliness than you're able to attain. And that's the empowering message that the Torah is telling us when we read the Parsha of Terumah, that you didn't have to know that wherever you are, no matter what the circumstances around you are, you're empowered and you have the ability to elevate the world. And that's what's meaningful to Hashem, that you have the second part process. The first part is Hashem revealing himself to the Yidden, but the second part is us taking that inspiration and elevating and infusing the world with the godliness. And this is reflective in the Rambam, where the Rambam writes about everyone contributing to help out with the Mikdash. The Rambam describes it as a Mikdash HaMidbar, because this was prevalent in that scenario where the Yidden were in the desert and they elevated all the materials in order to make a home for Hashem. So the same thing with us. In a time of exile, there's nothing that can stand in our way. We have the ability to elevate everything, and through doing that, we make a home for Hashem in this world where Hashem is present, and we'll experience that very soon in a revealed way.